call to order the June 13th meeting of the Cary Town Council. And at this time, I'll recognize Councilmember France for our ceremonial opening.
Thank you, Mayor. I think as we're all aware, this has been graduation week for all of our area high school seniors. And just on behalf of the council, our town staff, all of our citizens in Cary, we just wanted to extend our heartfelt congratulations to all the graduates, the class of 2019. We're all very proud of you, and we look forward to seeing what you all accomplish in the next chapter of your life.
And the parents.
And the parents, yes. So with that, I would ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go any further, I do want to mention that we have one council member on town business in LA, and we have another council member on the phone. Councilmember Robinson is on the phone. So if I forget to recognize you when we get to discussion, Ms. Robinson, please shout out and I'll remember.
Sounds good, thanks.
Okay. The first order of business is the adoption of the agenda. I don't know of any adjustments or modifications, so I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have no recognitions, reports, and presentations as far as I know, so we're going to go right to Public Speaks Out. That is item 3 on your agenda. We've included instructions for speaking at Public Speaks Out on the printed agenda, and if you would like to speak at Public Speaks Out, I'd ask that you take a seat in the rows to my right and that are shown as reserved and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers have 3 minutes each for their comments, and speakers may speak on any topic as long as it's not a public hearing, and we do have 2 public hearings this evening. There is a 3-minute time limit that will be enforced, and not to be rude, but to be fair to all of our speakers, I will interrupt you when you've reached your 3 minutes. There's a timer on the podium to help you keep track of time. Starts off with a green light, then goes to a flashing yellow light, and that means you have 30 seconds remaining, and when it hits the flashing red, that's when I will interrupt you. To have an efficient Public Speaks Out portion of our meeting, we ask that groups have a spokesperson to speak on behalf of the group. We also ask that if you would like to speak next after the current speaker, that you take a stand over there in the steps so that, one, we know you're going to speak next and we know we have a speaker next, and 2, that we can move more quickly and more efficiently. We also ask that the audience respect that this is a business meeting. Please do not make remarks, clap, or do anything from your seat that may distract from this meeting. So now's the time for Public Speaks Out, and I would invite our first speaker forward.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well this evening. My name is Dan Pike. My wife, Joy, and I have lived in downtown Cary for 23 years and are fairly active in the community. I'm here this evening not to complain or to share my views on a project or situation, but to tell you of a group of people who, to my wife and I, are the backbone of the events and activities in our great town. I'm talking about the events team for the Cary Public Works Department. Jay Schubert and his amazing team are the first to arrive and the last to leave every event. They take the vision and layout from Adam Bell or Ryan O'Quinn, and they make it happen. They work in the scorching heat, the freezing cold, and the wettest rain to get events set up and ready for the citizens of Cary to enjoy. And when it's all over, they break everything down and make the space look like it never happened. You may be sitting there saying, well, Dan, that's their job. That's what they should be doing, and you're exactly right. It is their job, but it's the way they do their job that's so impressive. They're so pleasant to work with, and they're always willing to go the extra mile to help someone or to provide them with something. Joy and I let them know we appreciate them all the time, and when I'm occasionally emceeing an event, I usually call them out and thank them for their hard work. Tonight, as we are recognizing them in front of council and the entire town of Cary for their continued amazing work, professionalism, attitude, and commitment to make Cary a great place to enjoy events put on by the town. We are so incredibly lucky to have such a great team of people dedicated to their job and the people they serve. Mr. Overton and council, I ask you to pass these sentiments onto the Public Works Events team and let them know the citizens of Cary greatly appreciate them and acknowledge their hard work and efforts. We are so incredibly lucky to have them. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all that you do for our great town.
Thank you, Mr. Pike, and thank you for your kind words. They really mean a lot.
You're very welcome.
We did have a recognition tonight, didn't we?
We did. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for public speaks out before we go to public hearings?
My name is Chris Hessel, and I live at 101 Glenmore Road in Cary. You're not going to like what I have to say tonight, as I only have 3 minutes to pour out my heart. But I have much to say, but what I have to say is much more accommodating towards the integrity of the process than some of my neighbors. The feeling among us is that this council will pass 2018 rezoning case number 22, but the reasons are not good ones. When others have suggested favors, or I have come to your defense and said it is simply a lack of backbone. There is a lawyer in the town, Jason Barron, who handles this case, but handles larger cases in town as well. I think you know him well. Standing in his way could cause a lengthy legal process, and it's easier just to say yes now. The number one concern of council to us seems to be avoiding conflict. This is understandable since this isn't your full-time job, and going to bat for the citizens would take a lot of time, personal time. So my defense of counsel equates to a conflict of interest based on personal loss of personal time, potential loss of personal time, rather than some favor. It's easier decision to decide with the developers, with the power of lawyers, than decide rather on the side of the unsophisticated citizens who are unlikely to pony up the cost to fight the battle and to prevent this spot zone. If this case passes, I'm reminded of an ancient story of Naboth and draw parallels, except for one detail. Please Google the story from the original text. In it, we have Ahab, the developer, who wanted a piece of property for a different use and cried when his neighbor wouldn't sell out. Today, Ahab, the applicant, would have more crying power because they presumptively already closed on that property just last month. But no worries, Jezebel, the lawyer, isn't finished yet. The story ends with a spineless town council who wouldn't stand up against Jezebel executing judgment against Naboth. The one detail that's different in this story is that I don't have the integrity that Naboth did. I'm selling out and leaving. Unfortunately, my neighbors don't have the means to do what I'm doing, as it is coming at a great cost. After I move,
Mr. Hustle, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. Your time has expired. If you would like for us to see the rest of your comments, you can leave them with the town clerk, and she'll make sure we get a copy. Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out? Seeing no one, we'll close Public Speaks Out, and we move to our fourth item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. For the benefit of people watching our meeting on TV, I'm going to take a moment to review the consent agenda items. One vote approves all of these items. On the consent agenda, we have minutes, alternate contracting method for completing construction of the downtown Cary Park, Second Amendment to the Swift Creek Land Management Plan. I would ask council members if anyone would like to pull one of these items for discussion. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
There is a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously and takes us to public hearings. We have the same rules for public hearings that we had for public speaks out with one change. Instead of 3 minutes for your comments, you now have 5 minutes for your comments. Our first public hearing is the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. Financial Strategy Manager Stacy Keachie will present this item and will open the public hearing. Council will not take action on this item this evening. Ms. Teachie.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, council. The budget is a cornerstone of the town's operations because it authorizes the spending that is necessary to serve our citizens by funding everything from payroll to water treatment chemicals to electric bills to traffic lights to park design. The budget communicates our priorities and values and defines our service levels. The process to set the budget is an essential component of planning for the public services that the town provides. And just like our personal budget is always a challenge because of the tough decisions to allocate resources among competing priorities, we all know that there is never enough to do everything that we would like to do. The budget for FY 2020 that begins July 1st, 2019 totals $336 million. It is 3.4% less than the current budget year and does not raise taxes. It does include a $2.50 per month increase in solid waste fees, which will cover approximately 85% of the cost of solid waste services. A challenge this year is an increase in the costs to process recycled materials of almost $1 million. In good news, the budget recommends a 2% utility rate increase instead of the 3% rate increase we expected. This recommended budget maintains our current service levels without any increase in employee positions and focuses on maintaining our infrastructure. More than half of our capital budget funds maintenance projects. A few highlights of the budget include investments and continuing priority for technology, public safety, and employee development. As you've experienced over the last 2 years, we've enhanced our financial management through what we've called a rolling budget process and the publication of quarterly reports. Through quarterly reflection and forecasts and rolling budget adjustments, we're highlighting the town's financial oversight all year long. Part of that financial focus includes outreach to our citizens throughout the year. On a monthly basis, through social media and the Bud newsletter, we encourage our citizens to share their thoughts and values about the budget. We provide multiple ways for citizens to tell us what they're thinking, by email, phone, Twitter, Facebook, or Nextdoor. Of course, citizens always have the opportunity to comment at any public speaks out portion of your regular council meetings. Any citizen comments that come in by social media, email, or voicemail are shared with you in the quarterly reports throughout the year. Tonight is the second of 2 special opportunities at key point in time in the budget development process for citizens to address council in the form of official public hearings. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to highlight next steps in the budget development process. As I mentioned, tonight is the second of 2 scheduled public hearings on the budget. The schedule anticipates council budget adoption on June 27th to prepare for the new fiscal year beginning July 1. Thank you for your attention to this crucial component of our fiscal management. Now is the time for the budget public hearing on the town's FY 2020.
Thank you, Ms.
recommended
Teachie.
budget.
Now's time for the public hearing for fiscal year 2020 budget, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone here to speak at this public hearing?
Good evening. I'm Jack Moody. I'm Vice President for Youth Outreach for the RTP chapter of the Barbershop Harmony Society. You probably know us as the General Assembly Chorus. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our Town of Cary grant request for Triangle Harmony Explosion, or for short, we use the term THX. And THX is a one-day a cappella music camp for middle and high school boys and girls throughout Wake County. We focus on the Wake County public school system because that's where most of our contacts are, the instructors at the schools. But THX is actually open to all middle and high school students throughout the area. It is a one-day music camp introducing barbershop harmony to high school and middle school boys and girls. And we offer this for a number of reasons. Number one, to support existing choral programs throughout Wake County. Number two, to help music educators see that barbershop harmony is a viable art form and to include it in their curriculums. Three, provide an additional opportunity for student singers to actually have onstage performance. To promote the formation of barbershop ensembles throughout the school system. And to illustrate that singing can be, should be, and is, in fact, a lifelong pursuit. Triangle Harmony Explosion is one part of our youth outreach program. The second part is an in-classroom outreach that we, as the Quartet Never Home 4, have been performing for the last 20-plus years throughout Wake County. We've been conducting these demonstrations throughout Wake County, and this year we got through to 5 different schools. Typically, we hit 5 to 10 schools throughout the year and have a full day of barbershop demonstration for all of the chorus classes at a specific school. We'll be there for 3 or 4 periods during the full academic day. Part of the presentation is an overview and an invitation to this one-day music camp, Triangle Harmony Explosion. And as I said, that the youth outreach program is two-pronged: the in-classroom barbershop demonstrations and our THX Festival. Now, THX is the only part of our outreach program that actually bears any cost. We actually hire professional music clinicians, and we contract award-winning barbershop quartets throughout not only North and South Carolina, but all up and down the East Coast to come in and be the instructors for our students. We provide lunch and dinner and a souvenir T-shirt for each of the student participants. And of course, this costs us money, and that's one of the reasons that we ask for the Town of Cary grant. The first 3, this will be our 4th opportunity for THX. The first 3 were not as successful as we had hoped, but we continue working on it, and we're developing more and more contacts within the Wake County public school system, and we actually have developed a few within the private school system also to provide students to come and enjoy the art of barbershop. Mr. Freddie Lee Heath is actually providing us 1 full hour at his September meeting of music educators to discuss THX with them, to demonstrate what we do, how we do it, and how this can actually benefit the choral programs throughout Wake County. So that's why I'm here, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here on the, my name's Justin Booth, here as Board President on behalf of the Carrying Place. I'll be brief since I feel everyone here knows the organization well, and I'm just here to say thank you for your support over the years and this year's fiscal year 2020 budget. To date, we've been around 25 years and helped over 430 families, and couldn't have done it without you, and look forward to working together to help fight homelessness and Cary together. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Anyone else for this public hearing? Going to close the public speaking part and open it up to Ms. Robinson first, if you have any comments. Hearing none, I'll open it up to the rest of the council if they have any comments. If not, we'll move on to our next item. All right. We now move to our second public hearing. It's on 19A04 Melba L. Goodwin annexation. Zoning Administrator Wayne Nicholas will introduce the hearing, and council may take action this evening. Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you. Good evening, council. This request is for annexation of 0.78 acres of property located at 1416 Princess Anne Road, approximately 850 feet south of the intersection with Medfield Road. The property is contiguous to the corporate limits, located within Cary's ETJ, and it's zoned residential 20. The request is not associated with a development plan or rezoning. Property contains a detached dwelling that the owner wishes to connect to town sewer service, and in accordance with the town's regulations, the property must first be annexed before it can connect to utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Now's the time for the public, if I can get this to work. Now's the time for the public hearing for 19A04 Melba L. Goodwin annexation, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Not, I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members, including Ms. Robinson, if they have any comments or questions. If not, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve annexation petition 19A04.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. We have no discussion items this evening. We now need to move into closed session, and once we come back to open session, we'll start a quasi-judicial hearing. So at this time, I'll recognize Councilmember George for our motion to go into closed session.
Pursuant to GS 143-318.11A, 1 and 3, I move that we hold a closed session to consult with attorneys employed by and/or retained by the town in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the town. Among other things, the council expects to receive advice concerning the following suit: NRE Memento Mori LLC, Chapter 11, case number 18-04661-5-DMW. And number 2, to prevent the disclosure of information that is made privileged or confidential by GS 143-318.10E.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we now move into closed session. We'll reconvene our council meeting at this time, and we're moving into our quasi-judicial proceedings. As a reminder to those in attendance, even though we are in the council chambers, an evidentiary hearing is more like a court case. Council acts like the judge and can only accept evidence that is competent material and substantial. The North Carolina and United States Constitutions give the applicant certain due process rights in an evidentiary hearing that council must comply with. The law governing the conduct of quasi-judicial hearings has been evolving over time, and the courts have increasingly emphasized the restrictive nature of this decision-making process. North Carolina Court of Appeals recently said, a quasi-judicial hearing is a judicial proceeding and not a legislative function. It is not an occasion to revisit the zoning or permitted use of a property. Council members' personal or policy preferences are irrelevant and immaterial. Because the Constitution protections given a property owner, council can only make its decision, and I'll repeat, only make its decision based on evidence presented. And we can only consider competent material and substantial evidence from anyone who testifies. By law, people qualified as expert witnesses may speak about whether this development will affect property values and whether it increases traffic resulting from this development will pose a danger to public safety. To those that are with us here this evening intending to testify that are not qualified as experts, we can only accept testimony from you on factual issues and what you have observed. Our contractual attorney, who's sitting to my left, will help us determine what evidence we can consider. The applicant presents evidence showing all approval criteria have been met, and council can only deny their request if competent, material, and substantial evidence to the contrary has been presented. The hearing procedural detail rules are attached to the printed agenda. So to put it in layman's terms, our hands are pretty much tied behind our backs, and we can only listen to competent experts that has been determined an expert and make a decision on what the experts say. So no matter what we think, no matter what you say, if you're not an expert and that evidence has been presented, we can't consider it. Am I correct?
I might not use those exact terms, Mr. Mayor, but yes, you're correct.
Okay, very good. So we'll move into our first evidentiary hearing, CPS Clinic 18 DP 0737. This case is before us tonight because the development plan requires approval by council. All speakers who want to speak during this public hearing must be administered an oath by Mrs. Johnson, who is sitting to my right. And at this time, we'll pause to allow those individuals who would like to speak at the public hearing to approach Mrs. Johnson and receive their oaths. Council will refrain from any action until this has been completed. Tongue-tied.
Easy for you to say.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Has everybody filled out in the oath? Everybody filled out?
Sure you don't want to get sworn in, Don? Everybody else is speaking.
I was gonna say, yeah. Hopefully it's just for call.
But if you raise your right hand, I will do that.
I'll leave.
At the end of the oath, everyone will say, I do swear. I.
Let me see if
We're going to pay for this last one. I'm assuming Jennifer dropped off.
yeah, you can. We have that option? I'll leave.
Let's see. We'll now ask if any council member has had any site visits, ex parte communication, financial relationship, specialized knowledge, or close relationship to an affected person to disclose, starting with Mr. Ura.
I have not, Mayor.
Mr.
No,
France?
sir.
I have not. Mr. Smith? Mr. George?
I have not.
All right, very good. Based on the disclosures you've heard from council members, I'll invite any party to this matter if they have an objection to one of the council members' participation in this hearing. Seeing no one, we'll open the quasi-judicial public hearing, and I'll recognize Ms. Cassie Schumacher Georgopoulos of our staff, who will introduce this hearing.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. Our first case this evening is from Hannah Investments. They are seeking development plan approval for a single-story office building on Kildare Farm Road, just north of the U.S. Highway 1 overpass. This development plan would typically be approved administratively. However, it requires Town Council consideration because the applicant removed Leyland cypress trees prior to plan approval. The proposed development includes 4 acres of property located just north of Fellowship of Christ Church and U.S. Highway 1. Active development in the area include Health Park at Kildare, Wake Med Hospital Vertical Expansion, and Wake Medical Office Park of Cary. 1700 Kildare Farm Road and Fellowship of Christ Church, as well as Panera Bread, currently have development plans under review. While Spring Arbor subdivision directly across the street looks like it's under construction, it has been completed. The proposed development includes a 5,200 square foot office building, 26 parking spaces, landscaping, and stormwater retention. The development plan covers all of 1608 Kildare Farm Road and a portion of 1700 Kildare Farm Road. All parcels are zoned OICU. As I mentioned, a development plan for the remaining portion of 1700 Kildare Farm Road and Fellowship of Christ Church property is currently under administrative review. The plan includes future office building, church expansion, and parking. One modification to the town's development regulations has been approved administratively by staff. Due to the developer's need as a medical practice, the maximum parking for the development has been increased from 21 spaces to 26 spaces. The development plan includes a 40-foot Type A buffer along the shared property line with McGregor Downs subdivision per the zoning condition attached to the property. The property is providing 1/2 or 10 feet of the Type B buffer adjacent to the property to the north due to it being zoned for non-residential uses. And the streetscape along Kildare Farm Road will be an average of 30 feet in width. The proposed medical office building is a single-story brick structure with cast stone accents. The roof line is a mansard style, and the plan complies with the zoning condition that the predominant material of the building be of earth tone brick. This concludes staff's initial observation or presentation. Following the applicant and other speakers, I will return to summarize staff's observations.
Thank you. At this time, we'll call on the applicant's attorney to present arguments and evidence in support of the application by addressing the applicable approval criteria.
Mayor Weinbrecht, members of the council, Mr. Silverstein. Bob Brady, attorney for the applicant in this matter, address 160 Iowa Lane, Cary, North Carolina. We're here for the approval of the development plan for Dr. Hannah's medical office on Kildare Farm Road. It has been quite clearly described by Ms. Schumacher-Georgopoulos in her report. As you all know, the reason we're here is not because it would be required for town council approval, but there was an inadvertent cutting of trees in a buffer area along the northern perimeter of this property. Once the trees were inadvertently cut, and the town knew about it on December the 21st, Mr. Jim Few, who was the contractor who had inadvertently cut those trees, thinking he had permission to do so, but unfortunately that did not turn out to be the case. On the afternoon of Mr. Few's visit to town council, or to the town offices to discuss the cutting of the trees and what his role was in that ill-fated venture, he met with staff on the site and toured the site to show exactly where the issue had occurred. On February the 6th, 2018, the town issued a notice of zoning violation and an assessment of fine. The requirements of that zoning violation were that the fine of $292 be paid, and it was in fact paid on March the 6th of 2018. There was a further requirement that the landscaping for this site be doubled, and the landscape plan and the plans that have been submitted by the applicant in fact accomplish that request. And the third request is the reason we're here now, is that development plan be approved by town council. We understand, and I believe that Ms. Schumacher-Georgopoulos will confirm, that other than the wrongful cutting of the tree, we would not be here, that staff would have the approval to approve what we're doing, would have the authority to approve what we're requesting. Having said that, I do have several folks that I would like to call to the stand tonight. I will tell you that the people who are here are Bill Daniel with William G. Daniel and Associates, an engineer who has been involved in the site plan itself. Bart McLean, also with William G. Daniel and Associates, who has also been involved in the planning of this project. Travis Fluitt is a traffic engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates, and Rich Kirkland is an appraiser with Kirkland Appraisals. Several of these folks have qualified as expert witnesses before tonight, before this council, and I would submit them and qualify them for expert testimony if I may tonight, one at a time. First, I'd like to call Mr. Bill Daniel. May I add, while Mr. Daniel is working his way down here, that Mr. Few is also here, the culprit who cut down the trees, as well as Dr. Bo Hanna, who is the owner of this property and wishes to occupy the space that will be built there. Mr. Daniel, would you identify yourself and describe your qualifications to testify here tonight?
My name is William G. Daniel. I'm a professional engineer in North Carolina, have been for a lot of years. Since 1980, I've had an engineering company here in Cary and have worked on a number of development projects. Many of those being site plans similar to this one.
Educational?
BS in civil engineering, and then a registered professional engineer.
I would tender Mr. Daniel as an expert qualified to testify on matters involved in this matter tonight. Mr. Daniel, I've just got a few questions I'd like to ask you. First, does the plan comply with all applicable requirements of the LDO, including all applicable town specifications and official plans and manuals or documents adopted by the town?
Yes, it does.
Does the plan provide harmony and unity with development of nearby properties?
Yes, it does.
I have no further questions of Mr. Daniel. I'll allow the council to have at him.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. If I could call Mr. Travis Fluitt, please. Would you kindly identify yourself for the council, please?
Travis Fluitt with Kinley Horn and Associates, 421 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina.
And could you tell us your qualifications to testify in this matter tonight, please?
I have a master's degree in transportation engineering from the University of Texas. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina, and I've been performing traffic impact analyses for sites like this one for over 15 years.
You have submitted a report to the town with regard to the traffic impact on the town.
Yes, I have.
And in regard to that traffic study that you did, does this plan provide safe ingress and egress for emergency services to the site?
Yes, it does.
And does the plan provide mitigation for traffic congestion impacts that may reasonably be expected to be generated by the project?
Yes, it does.
I have no further questions of Mr. Fluitt.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, I would call Mr. Rich Kirkland. Mr. Kirkland, I believe you've testified with me before on other matters, have you not?
I have.
Would you identify yourself to the council, please?
Good evening. My name is Rich Kirkland with Kirkland Appraisals. I'm a certified general appraiser. I've been appraising in Wake County and the area for about 23 years now. I'm also an MAI through the Appraisal Institute.
And did you submit a report to the town through me
I did.
late this afternoon? And I have a copy of that report. If any of the members of the council would like to see that, I have one that I could circulate to council members. And I would tender Mr. Fluitt, who previously testified, as well as Mr. Kirkland, as experts in the fields to which they will testify this evening. Mr. Kirkland, does the plan adequately protect other property or residential uses located on the same property from the potential adverse effects of the proposed development?
It does.
And does the plan provide harmony and unity with the development of nearby properties?
Yes, it does.
And does the plan provide safe conditions for pedestrians or motorists and prevent a dangerous arrangement of pedestrian and vehicular ways?
It does.
I have no further questions of Mr. Kirkland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have the report that was submitted today to Cassie, if I may. I think you'll have a gracious plenty there.
Is this a report something that was created today?
I'm sorry.
Is this in the staff report in any way?
This was not attached as an exhibit to the staff report. This came in today.
Has town staff had a chance to review it?
We have.
Okay.
So at this time, I ask council, you have the option to accept the handout or postpone this to a future date to give you time to review this. Is there any interest in postponing this?
No.
Seeing none, we'll continue. Mr. Brady, are you finished with your witnesses?
I'm sorry. I didn't know whether you all were still studying that report. Mayor Weinreich and members of council, there is one other issue that deals with this piece of property, and that is that there is a grave site, a private grave site, that was on this site, and it raises a great deal of questions. I can tell you that based, and this is not expert testimony, but based on information that I received when I was outside, that grave site was previously within the right-of-way of Kildare Farm Road, and the town moved it to where it was located on this property. And once it was located on this property, all the appropriate steps were taken to move this grave site to the rear of this property. The appropriate steps were taken, and the necessary certificate, and that certificate of removal of grave certificate required by North Carolina General Statute, Section 665-106, that certificate was filed with the Wake County Register of Deeds as required, and we submit that that has been adequately taken care of. Based on the evidence that we have presented here this night, we feel like we have satisfied the requirement that you receive competent expert testimony that should allow the council to unanimously approve the project that we're seeking to have approved this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. At this time, I'll invite speakers who've been sworn in who wish to speak in support of the application to approach the podium. Anyone else to speak in support? Seeing no one, will continue. Does any party in this matter wish to cross-examine at this time? No, okay. We'll now open the hearing to those who are opposed to the request. As a reminder, to those who testify, you have to limit your testimony to facts that you know. The applicant's representative has a right to object to the testimony. He may object while you're speaking. They have the right to do that. Our contractual attorney, who's sitting beside me, will help the council determine what evidence we may consider. So at this time, I'll invite anyone who is opposed to this request to the podium.
Yes.
Anyone opposed to the request? Seeing no one, will continue. And I'll call on staff to provide professional observations about the requests.
This development plan would typically be approved administratively. However, it requires town council consideration because the applicant removed 31 Leyland cypress trees prior to approval. The applicant has been fined and is required to provide double the amount of landscaping on the parcel in the areas disturbed. All other required buffers are consistent with the LDO requirements. Lighting on the site is proposed to be 12 feet in height, which is less than the maximum of 18 feet established by the approved zoning condition. The proposed office building is consistent with the surrounding development. The plan includes ample pedestrian accommodation connecting the medical office to the parking lot and to future development, as well as establishing a sidewalk in this area along Kildare Farm Road. The dashed blue line shows the location of the sidewalk along Kildare Farm Road. Vehicular access within the site is provided to provide connections between this development and the future development parcels to the south, as well as to the north, and this will reduce potential conflict points among driveways on Kildare Farm Road. One full access is proposed at the driveway on Kildare Farm Road as part of this project, and a second full access is being proposed in the future development. Staff has reviewed the information and concurs with the analysis by Kimley Horn and the need for both access points. This concludes staff's observations. Council is reviewing the development plan against the 6 approval criteria, and with that, we are happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. How far is that new proposed entrance to the new light up by the hospital?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask for one of our traffic staff to answer that question. Oops. You just want to know the spacing between the 2 driveways along Kildare Farm Road?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had a concern about entrance, egress, when it's close to a major 6 lanes, So I'm just when I look at this, I can't tell where that light is.
Good evening, council. Good evening, Mr. Overton. The distance from the driveway that you're in reference to is about 500 feet.
And that's within our code.
So can you identify yourself for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. My name is Robert Myers. I'm one of your traffic engineers with the town of Cary.
Thank you.
Can I ask, are these full access, ins and out, left, right, every way?
Yes,
Both
sir.
these driveways, the future planned one and this one?
Yes, sir. They're
Okay.
both full access drives.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, all of this stuff meets our code, meets our plan, meets everything. The only reason we're here tonight is because they accidentally cut down a bunch of trees. Is that right?
That is correct.
Have so I'm clear, they have since satisfied that concern or that unlawful cutting down of the trees?
They have paid the fine. Their development plan proposes the double amount of landscaping in the required areas. So yes, they have.
So the buffer, when it's all said and done, will be at what is, or will it be as good as or better than what would have been required?
The vegetation will be different. They cut down Leyland cypress trees, so there will be a mixture of deciduous trees and shrubs that will go back
Okay.
in that place.
Okay.
That's where there's some judgment as to what, you know.
Well,
is that-
we're not in the deliberative phase.
No, I
wanna be very
understand,
careful.
but I want to get back to the point about if it's all as good as before. And what, the answer I heard was, it's different.
It is.
Okay, and how much was the fine?
The fine was $292.
$292 for 31 Leland Cypress.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Brady, would you like to cross-examine?
No.
The town witness, sorry.
I think I'm fine.
Okay, very good. At this time, I'll ask council members if they believe any evidence that has been presented tonight which warrants a continuance of this hearing. Seeing none, we'll begin now the deliberative phase of the hearing and then open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I'm curious because I know we're at the end of this process, but I did hear an appraiser address safety in and out of a development. I don't think that's the appraiser's job to address safety, so I think that wasn't I shouldn't consider that expert testimony. That should have come from the traffic engineer.
I don't think you have to consider that if you don't want to.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? If we're ready to move on a motion, I'll close the public comment portion of the hearing, and I'll ask council members for a motion on the proposed development plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the development plan. For the reasons discussed, I move that we approve the proposed development plan with the conditions as stated below, as it meets all the approval criteria set forth in section 3.9.2I of the LDO, and that this approval is conditioned upon the following: that the applicant must satisfactorily address all remaining development review committee comments on the master plan set submitted for signature.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Brady. We now move to our second evidentiary hearing, Anchor Auto Outlet 19 DP 6072 and 19 SU 001. This case is before us tonight because it requires a special use permit. As I stated earlier, the law governing conduct of quasi-judicial hearings has been evolving over time, and the courts have increasingly emphasized the restrictive nature of this decision-making process. If the applicant presents evidence showing all approval criteria have been met, the council can only deny the request if competent, material, and substantial evidence to the contrary has been presented. The hearing procedures and the detailed rules are attached to the printed agenda. All speakers who would like to speak during the public hearing must be administered an oath to Mrs. Johnson, who is to my right, and we'll pause at this time to allow those individuals who would like to speak at the public hearing to approach Mrs. Johnson and receive their oaths, and council will refrain from any action until this has been completed.
Everybody filled out an oath.
These are all staff.
Okay. Got to go with the process, just like a blanket oath.
At this time, I'll ask council members if they'd had any site visits, ex parte communication, financial relationship, specialized knowledge, or close relationship to an affected person to disclose, starting with Mr. George.
I have, before I say have not, I've heard from the applicant that there was going to be an application.
Do you believe that's going to impact your decision?
I do not.
Mr. Smith?
I have none.
I have none. Mr. France? Mr. Yarrow?
I have none.
Very good. Based on the disclosures you've heard from the council members, I invite any party to this matter if they have an objection to council members' participation in this hearing. Anyone have an objection? Seeing none, we'll open the quasi-judicial public hearing. And once again, Ms. Cassie Schumacher-Georgopoulos of our staff will introduce this hearing.
Thank you.
I'm getting used to saying
Just rolls off your tongue.
You're doing great. Our second item tonight is for Anchor Properties of Raleigh. The applicant is seeking to reestablish an automotive sales use at 1300 Buck Jones Road. Princess Nail Supplies most recently occupied the location. In the late 1990s, Crossroad Ford established an automotive sales use on the property. After that, the town amended its development regulations to require a special use permit to operate motor vehicle sales uses in the general commercial district. When Crossroads Ford left the site, a non-conforming use was abandoned. The non-conforming use was abandoned and cannot be reestablished without a special use permit. Council will need to make two different decisions for this case. The first, for the special use permit, will be asking the question, is the use appropriate for the location? And the second will be, is if the development plan is appropriate for the location. The site was developed in the mid-1980s as part of the Buck Jones Shopping Center and is adjacent to other commercial uses to the northeast, southeast, and southwest. A portion of the Hickory Ridge subdivision borders the property to the northwest. The building is situated at the southwestern end of the site, with most of the parking northeast of the entrance. The applicant is proposing no changes to the site other than those necessary to bring it into better alignment with the current ordinance. The LDO requires perimeter buffers based on the use-specific standards for motor vehicle sales and rentals next to other business uses. The standard requires separation from any other business uses by a 30-foot Type A buffer. Adjacent to the Hickory Ridge subdivision, the perimeter buffer requirement is a 20-foot Type C buffer based on the LDO perimeter buffer requirements. These buffers are being provided to the extent possible given the existing development on the site. For instance, the building sits about 10 feet from the southwestern property line, making the full 30-foot buffer impractical to provide. Doing so would require demolishing either a portion of the existing building or a portion of the shared access drive with the adjoining use. Additional plantings are also being added to the 20-foot streetscape. No changes are proposed to the access and the circulation of the site. And this concludes staff's initial presentation. Following the applicant and other speakers, I will return to summarize staff's observations.
Thank you. This time we'll call on the applicant's attorney, Mr. Brady, to present arguments and evidence in support of the application by addressing the applicable approval criteria.
Mayor Weinbrecht, members of council, Mr. Silverstein, once again, Bob Brady, 160 Iowa Lane, Cary, North Carolina. Tonight we're here because of the chronology of this piece of property. Many of you will remember Helmo Ford, which was in this area, and most of you, or all of you, will remember Crossroads Ford that was on this precise site. So the chronology is a car dealership, an LDO, car dealership goes, and now we want to put another car dealership there. And why we're here is because the LDO intervened in that process. I will present expert testimony tonight that I believe will satisfy the requirements for both issues that we're here to address tonight, the development plan or the plan of development, as well as the special use permit. And with the town's permission, I will incorporate both of those with testimony by the experts one at a time. First of all, I think it's important to know that the applicant is doing nothing whatsoever to alter the structure on this property. They are doing the things that are required to bring it into compliance to satisfy the special use permit requirements. Tonight I have with me Drew Draper, who is the Transportation Planning Manager with Weatherell Engineering, Mike Zaccardo, Civil and Site Director with Weatherell Engineering, and Rich Kirkland, again, who is the appraiser that you heard from in the previous quasi-judicial hearing. In addition, tonight, I have representing the property owner, Bob Dascom, and representing the tenant, Sam Atala. And first, I would like to call Mr. Drew Draper to testify, please. Mr. Draper, would you identify yourself to the town?
Good evening. My name is Drew Draper. I'm the traffic engineering and transportation planning lead for Weatherell Engineering. I've got approximately 15 years of experience. I had received my master's in transportation planning from Florida State University, and I am a certified professional transportation planner.
I would submit Mr. Draper as an expert to testify on the matters to which he will testify this evening, and I would begin by asking Mr. Draper, with regard to the approval criteria for the special use permit, will the proposed use or development of the land materially endanger the public health or safety?
No, it will not.
In your professional opinion, is the proposed use appropriately located with regard to transportation facilities, water supply, fire and police protection, waste disposal, and similar facilities?
Yes, it is.
In fact, we do know that there is a brand-new fire station that's being constructed just around the corner on Nottingham, is that correct?
That's correct.
And finally, Mr. Draper, will the proposed use cause undue traffic congestions or create a traffic hazard or unsafe pedestrian pathway?
No, it will not.
And you have submitted a report to the town that addresses all these items, have you not?
Yes, I have.
I have no further questions of Mr. Draper.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to call Mr. Mike Zaccardo. Would you identify yourself for the town, please?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mike Zaccardo, Civil Site Director at Weatherall Engineering.
Your background, your qualifications as regards education and
I
experience.
have a Bachelor's of Technology degree in engineering, civil engineering technology. I've been out of school 35 years doing private design work in consulting firms, and I'm licensed in 4 states, one of them being North Carolina.
I would tender Mr. Zaccardo as an expert qualified to testify on the matters to which he's testifying here tonight. First, Mr. Zaccardo, in your professional opinion, will the proposed use or development of the land generally conform with the comprehensive plan, other official plans and manuals or documents adopted by the town?
Yes, it will.
With regard to the criteria required for approval for this plan, does the plan comply with all applicable requirements of the LDO, including all applicable town specifications and official plans and manuals or documents adopted by the town?
Yes, it does.
I have no further questions of Mr. Zaccardo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to call Mr. Rich Kirkland once again. I believe Mr. Kirkland has qualified as an expert to testify in these matters, so I'll forbear the request that he go through that again. With regard to the site plan, Mr. Kirkland, in your professional opinion, is the proposed use reasonably necessary for the public health or general welfare, such as by enhancing the successful operation of the surrounding area in its basic community functions or by providing an essential service to the community or region?
It does.
Will the proposed use or development of the land substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property?
No.
Is the proposed use or development of the land in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the area or neighborhood in which it is located?
It is.
Of the 6 approval criteria, does the plan adequately protect other property or residential uses located on the same property from the potential adverse effects of the proposed development?
It does.
Does the plan provide harmony and unity with the development of nearby properties?
It does.
I have no further questions of Mr. Kirkland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I said before, the owner of this property plans, and the applicant plans no structural changes to the property. And based on the expert testimony that you've heard here tonight, I believe that they have satisfied the requirements for approval of both items before the town council this morning, and we'd ask for unanimous approval.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Any need to cross-examine? Okay, very good. And at this time, I invite speakers who've been sworn in and wish to speak in support of the application to approach the podium. Anyone else to speak in support that's been sworn in? Seeing no one, we'll continue. Does any party to this matter wish to cross-examine the witness who testified in support? There was none, so therefore we'll continue again. Open the hearing to those who are opposed to the request. As a reminder to those testifying, please limit your testimony to facts that you know. The applicant's representative has the right to object to your testimony. He may object while you're speaking. They have the right to do that. Contractual attorney who's beside me will help counsel determine what evidence we may consider. I would invite the first speaker forward to speak in opposition. Anyone to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, we'll now call on staff to provide professional observations about the request.
The subject property and the surrounding area is designated as the destination center in the Imagine Cary Community Plan. The destination center should contain an integrated mix of commercial, office, and residential uses. Other than one other car dealership existing across Buck Jones Road, this will be a second car dealership in the area. The existing site and building are consistent with the suburban commercial development of the surrounding properties. Overall, staff feels that an occupied structure contributes more to the productivity and success of the surrounding area than an unoccupied structure. Staff does not anticipate any substantial impacts to adjoining properties based on the minimal amount of development proposed and the use history of the property in general. The existing development on the site dating from the mid-1980s precludes full compliance with the perimeter buffer requirements of the LDO. The building is located less than 5 feet from the shared property line with the commercial uses to the south, preventing the required 30-foot Type A buffer from being provided. The continuous row of shrubs is being provided in those areas to increase the screening above the current condition. Residential uses to the northwest of the site are separated by the required 20-foot Type C buffer, which contains a privacy fence in addition to the required plantings. Buffer plantings and streetscapes on the other sides of the property are being planted to the required rates as far as practicable, given the development footprint of the site. Access to the site is not being altered from the existing condition. Currently, there are 2 driveway entrances along Buck Jones Road. The southernmost driveway is shared with the commercial indoor recreation use adjacent to the site. The analysis does not recommend any road improvements to accommodate projected site traffic. Staff has reviewed the traffic analysis and concurs that roadway improvements are not needed for the reuse of this site. Again, council will need to make 2 different decisions for this case. The first for the special use permit asking, is the use appropriate for the location? And the second is if the development plan is appropriate for the location. With that, we would be happy to answer any questions.
Would you like to cross-examine, Mr. Brady?
No, thank you.
Very good. Either party believe there has been any evidence presented that would require a continuance of this hearing? I have to ask, it's almost... Nope, all right. We'll now begin the deliberative phase of the hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I don't know if this is deliberative or just, I want some questions for clarification.
We're in deliberative. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, well, no, you don't want me to do that. When we created the LDO, that was between the 2 times between Hemholt and Crossroads, is that correct? That's the question I have, because what I recall, and I fall on my sword about my memory sometimes, so, you can challenge it if you want. But what I recall is that the concern was that we were trying to generate more of a mixed use. And we did have some applicants back then that there was a fad going on where people were taking buildings such as this and making them your own, like repair shops where you could come in and do your own oil changing. And there was things of that nature going on. Those didn't get past staff. They didn't get to us. So I think, what I'm trying to understand is, did council at the time have a goal with that LDO so that we didn't, so that we wouldn't fall into the trap of going back to the same uses again? That's what I'm trying to recall, and
I can recall some of the
discussion. Can you recall?
The fear was that you would have a use that fit the overall zoning that was undesirable. And so they made automotive sales special use so that we could decide whether or not that was appropriate. That's what I remember. That was like in the early 2000s.
I thought it was earlier than that, but
No,
you're
I
right.
was on.
You're right. Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to clear.
And I could actually tell you a place where one was considering, but I won't.
Right. And then the second, as if this use goes through, is it then a full-service sales and service, and it would have all of the, the appropriate functions that you would see in a car shop? And I just wanted to know that.
Yes, I think that we'll call up the owner to speak to his business and his business practices.
Mr. Brady, if you like, that microphone works where you're sitting. You don't have to.
Sam?
Well, sometimes you have.
Well, yeah.
Sam is the owner of the Anchor Auto Sales that will occupy the property, and if you would like to pose questions to him,
I'm just trying to understand, is it strictly sales, or is it as before, like with the two previous car dealerships?
It will be sales plus minor service only for my own vehicles, no outside service.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions?
And is that part of the special use that is it for sales, but then I'm not sure if it's for repairs. That's what I'm trying to figure out is what's the.
I think the questions we're asking are fine. However, there's been no evidence presented against this, so we really don't have a choice this evening, my understanding. Only evidence has been presented in support. No evidence has been presented in opposition. And as was stated at the beginning of the meeting, no matter what we think, no matter what we value, no matter what we care about, if evidence hasn't been presented in opposition, then we got no choice. Am I correct?
When competent and substantial evidence is introduced in support of the application, then in order to turn it down, you have to have competent and substantial evidence to the contrary.
Right, and we've had none.
But I want to understand what we're approving, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah,
That's fine. I'm asking for a clarification.
Excuse me, if I could ask some clarification. Doug Loveland with the Planning Department. The service use is an auxiliary or associated use with an automotive sale, so that's part of the permitted use or part of the use. So if you're allowing an automotive sales, you're also allowing an accessory, so to speak. That's the sportive service use. It's all part of the same use.
That's what I'm asking. Okay.
Right. And that's the key point.
Okay.
I agree with what you're saying.
I mean, I don't like it.
I just want to know what I'm approving.
That's right. That's all I'm asking.
And then, the final question is, I heard, I think from the staff, that there is a privacy or a fence separating the homes back there. Does that already exist, or is that part of the agreement upon approval?
I apologize.
Mr. Daskin.
I just want to know if it's there.
Mr. Daskin has been involved in the ownership of this property for a very long time, and I think he can address that question specifically.
Bob Dascom, 2105 West Maryland Circle, Cary. I represent the owner partnership, and the fence along the northern, line has been in place. We keep it in state of repair. It's been there for as long as we've had the property. We acquired this property from Crossroads Ford when they were there. So, and obviously the landscape plan shows quite an intensification of landscape to what's there now in light of this application. Does that address your question?
Other questions?
Well, the commentary, right or wrong, allowed or not, is we've had a history of fences that look nice for 2 years and then go quickly into disrepair. So as long as I'm hearing that there's aggressive buffering and all that, but I'm not a fan of those fences, especially in our older areas that we're trying to, give them every benefit of the doubt so that we can kind of improve the look and the feel of that area. So my appeal is that you just be to the staff, that we're very diligent with this applicant on the buffering that's over there.
Yes, sir. I would agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll move into the motion on the special uses first, I believe. Yes.
I can make a motion?
Yes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve special use for the reasons discussed. I move that we approve the request for special use made by the applicant as the request meets all of the approach criteria of the section 3.8.3, appropriate, so 383 of the LDO. This approval is conditioned upon the following: the resolution and permit approved for this special use request shall be recorded with the Wake County Register of Deeds upon the expiration of the appeal period per section 3.8.4E of the LDO. And number two, the approval of this special use is conditioned on the subsequent approval of and completion of construction in accordance with Development Plan 19-DP-1 2025-0672.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yeah. Question for clarification. Should we approve this special use? Is that entitling this property for perpetuity or just for this specific user?
Good question.
Sorry, Lisa. It goes with this development plan.
Okay, so should this applicant cease to do business, then anybody else would have to come back for another special use?
Right.
Okay.
Other questions? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now motion on the development plan.
Motion to approve the development plan for the reasons discussed. I move that we approve the proposed development plan with the conditions as stated below, as it meets all of the approval criteria set forth in 3.9.2I of the LDO. This approval is conditioned upon the following. Number one, the applicant must satisfactorily address all remaining Development Review Committee comments on the master plan submitted for signature.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
Only discussion is, I know there's no teeth to this, but I do appeal for some real thought and help in that buffer on that side with the old fence that's there.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And so I'll close the public hearing. And we have no other items, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion, second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.